What's going on, guys? Keep on keeping on podcast, episode 4. 4. Yeah, we're getting there,
we're
man.
Getting there.
We're
getting up in the numbers.
We're officially moving. We're officially, live.
Yeah, live on YouTube. So
Spotify, the whole thing,
all
everywhere.
audio streaming podcasts.
And it's really exciting. And I guess first things first is just thank you for the positive feedback we've
100%.
gotten so far.
100%. What are we? We're looking at I think last I checked it was 74 views and 57 downloads for the first episode. And obviously you guys this is gonna be episode 4. So when you guys see this, it'll be ancient history.
At the time when episode 2, episode 2 just dropped.
Episode 2 just dropped. But we're exceptionally thankful for all of the feedback and the positive messages. People who've reached out, the random shout outs, genuinely appreciative of all of that. So thank you.
And I did want to mention, now that we're talking about this, what you had told me about some people that you haven't even talked to in a while. And they're like, oh, I love this. I got
a random shout out Cody Kelly. He gave me we played basketball together, and it'd been years. And for me to wake up one day and check Twitter and to see a random mention and look at it, and then he just shouted out the podcast was surreal. That it moved somebody that I hadn't had a conversation with in such a long time. So shout out Cody. I hope things are well, man. And appreciate you.
Yeah, man. And that's what we were saying, off air, of just when you get people that are like, oh, I love this, this theme of a podcast of these topics, because we feel like a lot of people
don't talk about it, but they need it. Yeah.
It's something that they want to hear or talk about, but they don't necessarily.
I think there's so much uncertainty in today's world. When people present something that can make them feel certain, it's a good feeling. And when we can remind people that we're not our fears or our anxiety or our doubts or our concerns, in our true essence is a lot of gratitude, a lot of love, creating and being our highest self, that's people gravitate towards that, because we've been taught so much to doubt who we are, is this the right move, or and it becomes almost second nature, and it becomes harder to reinforce we can do what we want to do, or or just not even thinking of it what we want to do, but more if we think of in terms of just serving somebody else or making the thing is beneficial to somebody else, we'll do it a lot. It'll reinforce us a lot better, because a lot of times we'll do more for others than we'll ever do for ourselves.
That is true.
And so I think that's why a lot of people are resonating with it, because there is a lot of uncertainty, and there is a lot of with everything that's going on, people are scared, people are, fearful. So when you can provide an avenue to reinforce the positive things in life, the positive beliefs, I think people will gravitate towards that.
Yeah. And I guess just feeling like you're not alone.
Yeah.
100%. A lot of people are in that same
100%.
boat, even though some people like to talk about it, some don't, or some maybe feel like they shouldn't.
Or even just hearing the journey of somebody else who's going through it, it'll help you connect with somebody else, and those same doubts, to hear them vocalized maybe through somebody else, makes them feel okay, this is completely rational. I'm not stupid for thinking this, or I'm not silly
I'm
for
not
thinking
the only
this.
one.
Yeah, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you one thing, we all go through all of those doubts, fears, doubts, concerns, and us, I guess, being a little vulnerable on this podcast or talking a little bit about our journeys will help make people feel better about being vulnerable and maybe sharing that or being vocal about it. And, when you're vocal about certain things, you can release the tension from your shoulders and, take feedback maybe from somebody else. I like that. Yeah,
man. And it, for example, when you're talking about reinforcement and everything, this few days ago, I was able to, how we talk about our issues with sleeping, right? And that's one of my biggest obstacles, because it's that domino. If I can conquer my sleep routine, then everything else would just be
10x, right?
Yeah. And so the other day, and it occurred to me, I was able to, I got up early in the morning, I got that workout in, what we always talk about, and I was able to accomplish a lot throughout that day and then go to work, as opposed to waking up later, getting up, being a little sluggish, dragging to work.
Yeah.
And what occurred to me that I wanted to mention on here was on my way back from the gym, and also being here and like working on, you know, uploads or anything like that.
Yeah.
I reminded myself to like acknowledge that achievement. You know, it's very small, but it's like, hey, I got up extra early today.
Yeah.
I got my workout done. You know, I journaled. I did X. I did this.
Yeah.
And it kind of occurred to me of how important that is. I always, even myself, I catch myself, even on here, I always catch myself saying, I always wake up late, or I always mention the setbacks, or when I don't do something.
The negatives.
Yeah. And I was like, it's just as important. It's important. It's not good to mention, but it's important to mention the positives. Like, hey, I did this today.
Yeah.
Like, I got up and I accomplished this today.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. As opposed to just always, and I feel like this is very common where we only mention the things that we don't do, or we didn't do, or we should have done.
Yeah.
But we never mention what we did do and what we did well and 100%. What we accomplished. Even the smallest things.
I think we tend to like stack the negatives, and it'll become like, you know, I didn't do this right. I woke up a little later, or like I wake up late, or we always make it like absolutes.
Yeah.
Like I'm always waking up late, when that's not really the case, right? Like we don't always wake up late. There's days like that. Or we always do this, or whatever your blank is. I think we should also focus on stacking our positives or celebrating those small W's when they happen, because any small little reinforcement of like, this was good, will trigger your brain to like feel the need for like that small, celebrating that small W. And then you want to do it more and more and more. And so I think it's very important to stack your positives, more important than stacking our negatives. Stacking our negatives is almost natural.
Yeah.
Stacking our positives is a little harder to do. It's like, oh, I do these things right. Like, it's hard to, like, how many times have you asked yourself, what are the things you're doing right, rather than always asking yourself, what are the things you're doing wrong?
It's always resorting to that. Like, what am I not doing? Or what am I missing?
Yeah.
You know, what are my fears?
Yeah.
You know, it's a challenge, because if you just swap that, I mean, it's a completely different like lifestyle.
You feel a lot better about yourself if you just celebrate the things that you're constantly doing that you never even acknowledge. You know, there's things you do naturally that happen in a day-to-day, even if things are going super bad. It's like the additional thought. Maybe it's like, you know, writing I don't know, it's like telling somebody to, you know, if they're going somewhere, like, oh, drive safe. Like those little things that like genuinely shift the narrative. Like that shows you care for somebody, right? And like person could take that and be like, damn, like that person's showing a level of affection, and they carry on the rest of their day with that mindset. Like that little care you gave me, and then that person gives it to somebody else, and then that person gives it to somebody else. Like all of a sudden it's a chain reaction of like, you started by just, you might have been having a terrible day, but like that little positive thing that you do naturally, unconsciously, things that are like baseline, that you think are baseline, may not be so baseline for somebody who's, you know, somebody who's receiving it. They're like, oh, that person took an extra effort to tell me to drive safe or have a great day, or, you know, whatever it may be. Could be something that we take for granted.
Yeah, I mean, it's true when you really think about it. There's a lot of people, that they don't receive that. They don't get that. You know what I mean? Like, it's some people don't feel heard or cared for. Yeah. You know what I mean? And
a lot of people.
And it's crazy to think about, but it's true. Like what the bare minimum is for one person is like the absolute
high
treasure
for somebody else. Yeah.
Just being like, oh, so like, how are you? Yeah. Right. Like a random person. And that happens. That tends to happen a lot. Like, you know, where I work and stuff or anything like that. Like there's some people that they're so zoned in on their day to day, and they're just like in this zone. And when you kind of stop them, you're like, oh, like, how are you today? Or, oh, you know, if I look at their ID, I see they're from New York or whatever. I'm like, oh, so like, how is it over there? Whatever. And they kind of like, they instantly snap out of it. They're like, oh, no, I'm good. And then they kind of like start talking and talking and talking. And that's just something I kind of notice a lot. It's just really interesting, you know, how everybody's life and everything
100%.
is, but you know, we're all kind of going through it.
It's
together.
like you go to like I don't know, you're at a Starbucks drive-through, or you know, you're in a public checkout line, and just taking that time to acknowledge the person who's ringing you out, or you know, and something that's different from like, hey, like just ring out my stuff and let me leave. It's just like, hey, how are you? How's your day been going? Like something like that is as common as like something we might think it is, just by saying how are you. They might not like. They might have 10 people that have just gone through like, here's this, they pay, and then they leave. Or, you know, like, how much is this? And then yada, yada. And then their whole thing just becomes, like, transactional. Yes. Rather than you taking that minute and being like, how are you doing today? Or it's a beautiful day outside. Or, like, humanizing situations that should be humanized, you know?
That's so true. Because
instead of robotic, like.
I've been on that receiving end where, you know, I work basically like guest services for people at the casino. And there'll be times where I get a lot of people. Yeah. And they just look at you as, like, this. You're just this thing that I need to get what I'm looking for. And they'll come up to me and I'm like, oh, how are you? They won't even answer. They'll just throw the card and be like, I need a reprint of my card. It's very like dehumanizing. I was like, am I just like a robot? Right, you know, like I'm not a human being to you. And then I'll be like, all right, here you go. You know, basic customer service skills. Have a nice day. And they'll just walk away. I'll be like, no response, nothing. Yeah. And if there's only a certain amount of times you can receive that and be like, fuck, like it just kind of brings down your energy. Yeah. Then I get that one person that I'm like, I'm kind of like, oh,
you're already
like,
down from like 5 people in a row.
Yeah. And then that person will come up to me and be like, oh, like, hey, Justin, how are you?
Yeah. Boom.
And even if, you know, I'm like, oh, I'm good. Thank you. Like, but in my mind, I'm like, wow, like, thank you. You acknowledged me as a human being. Yeah. It's so simple. Yeah. And what is it that, what's that saying? It's like, common sense isn't
so common.
Isn't
common
so
anymore.
But dude, it's incredible what you learn being out there, and that's why I think it's good to acknowledge those things. Yeah. You know, like if someone's being nice to you, like like acknowledge it, take it in, and give it in return, give it to someone else, because everybody's in that same like boat, man. Like. I've had some like rude people, and it's crazy because I'm looking at them, and
like,
they
are you
just
serious
don't
right now?
see
they just don't see it. They don't. Yeah.
As because they're so caught up in their world.
Yeah.
And then you get those people that are just really present,
which is so crazy, right? Like if you think of like empathy is being so lost. And as generations continue with like technology and being thrown an iPad from when you're like 4 and 5, we thankfully didn't have to grow up like that. A lot of you watching this probably didn't have to grow up like that. But, you know, like just seeing technology replacing general communication skills, or parents that just don't want to parent and they're like, you know, kids being annoying, let me just throw them an iPad. Let me turn on YouTube, or let me, whatever the case may be. You see it all the time. And it's taking that empathy away that you would normally have just connecting with a regular person. Like kids are losing that. Yeah. More and more as like it's becoming technology based and social media based. You're seeing depression skyrocket because everybody's on social media comparing their lives to filters, edited stuff, highlights. It's that little empathy piece of like somebody just connecting as a human is being lost. And I think, which is why this dialogue is so important, is to remind people of what like the true essence of us really is. Being nice to one, not even nice, like being kind to one another, acknowledging another person's just presence. Yeah. Because no matter who that person is, whether that person's like a janitor or the person's a CEO, everybody has a life experience that you can learn from. I genuinely believe that. Yeah, you can learn from anybody. You have a conversation with a 5th grader and they'll teach you something that, you know, from their view of the world that you haven't even thought about, or you know, it's something completely new to you. So if you close yourself off from just having that experience with another person, I think that's detrimental, like long term. Yeah, man. If you're just like, I can't learn something from whoever, or, you know, this person because they're not this, or they're not like, you know, like people look for very selfish reasons to learn from somebody. Is at this position. Yeah, let me treat this person nice because, you know, they can do something for me maybe in the future. Like when you look at it from that lens, nothing really good is going to happen to you, because
it says a lot, you know, about a person, you know, like how you treat the janitor, you know,
100%,
and how you treat your boss.
The boss,
and it's like that says a lot about you if you're kind of. And I've seen that. I've seen that a lot. You know, again, working at a casino, and you see all these different avenues of the workplace. You know, and it's tough, man. Or the people that you get. A lot of people are so consumed in their own, and like what you were saying with, you know, like kids being raised with iPads and all technology. That stuff. They're learning communication based off what they see on Twitter, how they communicate on social media, which I think we can all agree is just very bad surface level. It's not, there's no communication there. Yeah. And if that's like your basis of communication, right? Because you're not really going out there, and it's a very...
And especially now when like everybody's at home and you know, like you're being confined to this 4 walls. Some people are still working from home, and you don't get that human connection. You can lose that. And people are seeing that, like the empathy level in kids and people born and being brought up in this COVID time, like they're losing that ability.
It's very scary.
Which is just us communicating, like us having a conversation. Like a lot of people, and bro, even before COVID, like it just being on, I remember in college campus, every time you'd be talking to somebody who just does not have communication skills, if that makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, there are introverts and there are extroverts, but
it's a shell that it will slowly, you can,
or just have, you know, the baseline, you know, just communicating. Yeah. Just having the ability to relate to somebody or to connect with somebody that's outside of your
comfort zone. Yeah.
You know, just even if that's like a brief, hey, how are you? Just that interaction rather than just making everything so I need this from you, you need this from me, transactional. Yeah. You know? So,
because it's true. Because I mean, I used to be. I'm still a shy person at times, but I feel like compared to how I used to be, you know, years ago. Yeah. It is possible to you can blossom in that social environment. Hell yeah. Because I used to be very like introverted and just like, oh shit, like I don't know what to say, you know. And I feel like at this point in my life, when you kind of learn a lot and you take everything in, and I think that's why, you know, what you're saying, social media and all that is not, it's not a good habit to rely on. Yeah. But I remember being really shy, being that person that I just couldn't, I wouldn't know what to say. I'd just be like, you know.
Dude, I was the same. It's funny you mentioned that. I was the same way. And people could look at me and they could look at my social media and they think, oh my God, he's so like, he's talkative, loud, like he's extroverted. But it didn't always start that way. It's because I was brought up in a household where it wasn't my first language, English. So initially when I first got into like a school environment, I had other people, I couldn't relate to anybody because it wasn't, you know, the shows that everybody was talking about, the kids shows, even like I wasn't watching any of that stuff. It was more, I was speaking Hindi at home. English was like a learning curve for me. I didn't have an immediate older sibling that could like, yo, these are the ropes that you need to learn as you grow. I was kind of the one figuring it out for everybody who's younger than me. And so like it was, and I pride myself on that because it from not having a role model or anybody to look up to, and then becoming who I was, like breaking, like you said, breaking open the shell, blossoming in a social environment, and then almost loving the social environment. Like I now enjoy being around people and
you crave it.
Exactly. Like I love this medium that we have, even just off of just me and you just talking, just having an hour that we can come and sit and just communicate, because a lot of people don't have that, or a lot of people don't even crave it. And so for like just the need as a human to communicate with somebody, relate to somebody, have the empathy, share a message from somebody who didn't have that. It's like, it's commendable on both of our parts that, you know, we outgrew that shell or that, you know, like need to be shy and introverted, because you can easily, you know, do that. You find you can't relate to anybody else. You can sort of like, okay, I'm just going to exist in my own world and I'm going to venture out when I need to, not just to connect. And then I guess when you do that, you lose out on certain connections and you know,
it's just it's exchanges that, you know, impact you in a great way. And we were talking about this off air, and I'll mention it here. You know, last night I was at work, right? Yeah. And I was I was about to clock out, and my supervisor, you know, we talk a lot during work and stuff like that. He's a great person. And when I was gonna leave, I was gonna leave with everyone because it was time to leave. And I was like, man, I kind of want his advice on some stuff and just talk to him real quick. And then, the part of my brain, there's like that part of your brain was like, no, just go home, But I was like, no, let me, and we ended up talking for like 2+ hours.
Yeah.
And it was a great conversation about very similar to like this. Just
keep in mind he was leaving work at like 2 a.m.
2 in the morning. Yeah. So I left work officially like at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And
which is very easy. The point I'm getting at is very easy for you to make the decision and be like, I'm going to go home. It's 2 a.m. Versus being like, let me reach out to somebody who's older who may know a little bit more.
Yeah. Like that's, just making it took me that little extra because I was that part of me, I was a little shy to be like, hey, can I talk to you? Because this is kind of like officially off the clock kind of talk, not like during work hours, quick conversation. Yeah. So a little part of me was a little like that shyness was like, no, maybe just go, look at the time. But then I kind of pushed that out and I was like, hey, it's not easy to be like, hey, can I talk to you about something? And then like really and.
Or even just asking advice, bro. Like, I think asking advice is people feel like it's such a demeaning thing. And it's really not. Like, even no matter how comfortable you get in social settings, like you said, that shyness, I feel that shyness too when it's like, should I talk to this person? Or should I reach out to that person and just, like ask what I want to ask? And then, like you said, there's sometimes that force that's like, just go for it. Yeah. Even though the mind's telling you, no, like, what's the point? Or, what are you going to get out of it? Usually you're going to get out something that you couldn't even imagine out of that conversation. And it becomes something enlightening and you learn something from it and you can,
And that's exactly what it was. It's just crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. And how your brain just wants to always find an excuse. Yeah. Like, no. Because, look at the time. You have to go home or this. It's like finding so many reasons. And I'm like,
do something. Which is another thing for like people that are pursuing their dreams and following it. You'll always find a million reasons by yourself to not do something, whether that be to start a podcast, whether that be to do a vlogging career, YouTube, or it could even be like to do the finance job or whatever it is. It doesn't always have to be creative. I know we're creative, so we like to cater to creatives, but it could be anything. It could be applying for that job, whatever. You can find a million reasons to why that won't work out. But you got to stick to that one reason that is true to you, that it will work out or that you want it to work out or whatever it is, and just stick to that one reason, because there's a million reasons you shouldn't do something, but there's always that one reason that means the most to you that you got to find like most powerful or overpowering those other meanings.
That place of growth for those things, it all comes from that, like breaking out of. Sometimes
100%.
Listen to that person that's talking to you because you can learn a lot.
100%.
And being open to that. Yeah. Because there's people too that just feel like, I don't have to talk to anyone. I know what I'm doing. Like it's very 100%. Just like, and being vulnerable, I guess. And people really appreciate that. Like what we were saying, we used to be really shy and then.
Because they can relate to it, bro. Like when you're vulnerable, you allow the other person to also be vulnerable by default. Yeah. They could be like, hey, look, like I also went through something similar. This is how I navigated it. And all of a sudden you're learning from that experience. And I think the important point you made is just being open to it. A lot of times we go through life like constantly stuck in our head, like I have to do this, I have to do that. And like not letting life come to us at times, because sometimes life, and I talk about this with a lot of people, is like you'll find sometimes people, it's like God speaking through them or the universe speaking through them, whatever you believe in. You don't have to believe in God, but like they'll say something that there's no reason that they should have any reason to say it. Like they'll say a point that you're like, oh wow, like, and it'll stick with you and that'll make you push for an extra year or two. And
it's like oddly specific.
It's oddly specific. Exactly. Yeah. It's like to the point where you're like, there's no reason why you should be mentioning that to me other than like the universe is speaking through you or God is speaking through you. And like you got to open yourself up to those moments, because you could discourage yourself from something and somebody could come in and just give you that extra boost that you need to like keep fighting. And you got to open yourself. You can't just go through day to day like, this is what I got to do, this is what I got to like. Open yourself up to life at times is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's so true, because like with that conversation, it turned into like this 2-hour great conversation that I left leaving like, man, you know what? Like, I feel like I'm on a good track right now. And
or even like I needed that conversation.
And and the main thing I got from that conversation was him saying like, hey, like you're doing all the right things.
Yeah.
Don't overthink. Just do what you know you should be doing, and you're doing well, and everything else will fall into place. Like you got to go with the flow. You can't always, you know, because structure everything 100%. Out all the time. 100%. And I was like, and you know, and just because something you need to hear.
100%. Because what bogs us down the most is like our idea of what it should look like versus what it is, and we think that that's an issue. In reality, like that's not really what that is. Maybe it's just calling for you to grow a little bit more, and we tend to overthink those situations, you know. Yeah, like that's all I could say. Like you just overthinking is probably one of our biggest issues.
Yeah.
When it comes to like what we're doing or why we're doing it. And I think the reason that is because of like we have so many options available to us where you feel like, okay, if I don't pursue the thing I really want to pursue, I could just do that. And then that will steer you away from versus just committing to like that one thing that you want to do and sticking with it, you know?
Yeah, man. And it's just, it's so like important, you know? I don't know. I don't know. When it just being open to all that, like what you're saying, just like really taking it in and going through with that. And when we finished that conversation, and it felt very oddly specific for me.
For you.
Like hearing the things he was saying to me, like the advice, and I was like, man, like, and him telling me, you know, he's like, look, you have like a shining light, right? Like you stand out, and he's like, you stand out in the workplace, you stand out in life, you know, like if you talk to 100%. Someone, like me and him, we just started, you know, he's new, like he just came in.
If you meet Justin, that's 100%.
and I appreciate it. And he was telling me that he's like, people talk with you and you're like, and I never see it that way because it's me, right?
Yeah.
We're so like,
we're caught up.
Hyper analytical on ourselves. We're so critical on ourselves that we don't realize those things. And he's like, but when you talk with people and, you know, you're like that. And the way I talk with him, the way I talk with you, that we started this, I feel that with other people. I just never really thought of it with myself, right? Yourself, because it's all, you know, but, you know, he told me that in that way. And I was like, man, I guess
that makes sense.
Yeah. Because like I've talked to people like at work or whatever, and we end up talking for a long time. People that I just met on the spot, and they want to just
converse.
And I'm like, man, and it's something that I've really enjoyed like opening up to. Yeah. You know, because again, being this shy person, I don't like, you know, why this is awkward. You know, like I hate that. I guess that mindset of when people are like, "Oh, this is like awkward,"
yeah,
and then they really get like tense. But it's like, as opposed to just being like, you can just laugh it off, brush it off, and that's it. Like you break the ice right there.
Like it's done. It doesn't have to be worse than what it, you know, what that awkward moment is. I think it's always like awkward if you make it awkward.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it'll only be like if you laugh it off and like joke it off.
It's done. Like you broke that ice. But then there's people that are kind of like, oh. And they want to,
and they tense up, and then like now you're like, I can't communicate with you properly.
And this is getting more awkward.
This is more awkward.
Yes,
100%.
Exactly.
Don't be that type of person.
Yeah, and it's really just learning to like let go.
Yeah,
like just be like vulnerable. I guess, you know.
I think, and it's funny. Like, you know, I was asked a long time ago, like, what's your most embarrassing moment? And I obviously could have picked any moment that I found really embarrassing, but at that time, like nothing came to mind. And I realized, like, I didn't really think anything was that stand out-ish. You know what I mean? I just didn't give any moment that energy that was like, this is the most... Because I guess I just, like you said, laughed it off, moved on. And, you know, those, like... I realized, like, I don't really empower those embarrassing moments to, like, what some people might hold. And I remember, like, I almost, like, I clapped myself or pat myself on the back for that. I was like... That's really good. Like, you're not giving that energy to what some people might get bogged down by. Yeah. Their most and they might hold on to that moment in other scenarios that might come up, and then all of a sudden you have that memory of like an embarrassment. You shy away from expressing yourself fully just because you're scared of what might be an embarrassing moment.
Yeah, I guess like a good example would be like you have two different type of people, right? That person that trips and falls, and they're kind of like, and they like run away, and that person that trips and falls and like kind of laughs it off like, oh shit, and then and I've been in I've had a lot of embarrassing things happen to me. There's so much shit that happens. Me too. But I've kind of learned to just be like, oh yeah, like
and laugh it off.
Oh shit, whatever.
And or like if, for example, if you laugh it off, you just look at the person near to you like you didn't see that, and just keep moving. Like it makes it lighter for the both
because
of you.
Because when you don't, it just makes it so funny. Like 100%. It's so awkward. Because I've seen it happen. Like when I leave work, there's a certain area where you clock out, and there's like the floor is really like
either sticky?
Dry. Yeah, like for some reason it wants to trip you all the time. And I've tripped a few times, and every time I trip, I'll look and be like, like this damn floor every time. It gets me. But then I've seen people that trip and they like kind of look around. They just walk a little faster.
Out of the situation.
Kills me, dude. It kills me because it's like I get it, but it's like you gotta acknowledge it. 100%. Not it's like I feel like you
bond with another person more if you acknowledge it.
Just easily.
It's easier to like person will be laughing, you'll be laughing.
You break the ice.
It's so human, bro. Tripping and falling is so human.
Yeah.
Like that's just like one of the most human things. Naturally that'll happen. You could connect with somebody easily because somebody else has been through something like that.
Yeah, like it's so
everybody's
simple.
been through it. Like you just you could connect with somebody and just be like, yo, like laugh it off instead of just you lose that moment with somebody else. I view it that way. Like that's what I guess has gotten me out of my shell is like you lose that moment with somebody. You know what I mean? That moment may never come again where you can connect with somebody from either like an awkward standpoint, embarrassing standpoint, laugh it off. But even in like other moments, like if you really want to like talk to somebody, reach out for advice, you lose that moment of connectivity because a lot of people think like when somebody's more successful, more rich, they're like, I can't ask for advice because, they're either rich people don't give advice or successful people don't share or whatever story they've given themselves.
Or like where you said it's like demeaning to you, right? Like,
it's demeaning.
Like, it's showing that you need help.
I need help. Yeah, like why would I ask that? But you lose that moment with somebody else, and all of a sudden that person could be a lifelong mentor for you. Especially if that person has years on you or experience on you, you lose that chance to have somebody guide you through your own issues.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, like the only person that can truly guide you is yourself, because you've been through your life. You've been through your own experiences. Nobody else can look in your life and be like, you should do this, you should do that. I believe that. But another person can tell you like, look, this is an obstacle you may face as you approach this milestone of your life. You might have this issue or that issue, and then you can navigate around that issue or at least have the awareness that issue will present itself. Because leaders anticipate and then losers react. Tony Robbins says this. It's if you don't know what's coming, you're forced to be reactive. Whereas leaders will find a way to anticipate, okay, this might happen. How can I best navigate this situation? So I don't if I have to take a step down, it's not 6 steps down. It's like a step down. And then I keep moving forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's that basic key of just making sure you have like awareness.
Yes.
100%. And I think that's one thing when, doing the, like a meditation, right? Or I like doing the float tanks, those the sensory deprivation tank, because that really helped me. Like,
you've done those before?
Yeah, they're so good.
Where's the closest one?
There's one on there's a new one in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, wait.
And there's one in Hollandale.
I've been meaning to. I think I've heard of the Hollandale one, but
so good, man. They're so good. Like you're in a tank, you're just nothing. You're just floating.
Wow.
And the Epsom salt, it's like floating on a cloud. But
how long is it?
An hour. You can do it for 90 minutes. You can do it. Some people do it 2 hours. The longest I've done it was an hour and a half.
Gotta check that out.
It's so good because it's just you with nothing, like no sound. It's just hearing yourself breathe. Yeah. And you don't see anything. Yeah. You can have a light on if you want, but I don't. Yeah. And it's just you and your thoughts. Yeah. And that you really learn to like master that, and really understand how important like that mental break is, and like being aware of it. Like what you're saying, 100%. A lot of people just react to the world. Yeah. People just react to everything. They don't have that sense of awareness to step back and be like, okay, like I'm approaching this path, or this could happen, or even just like, this is my life right now. Everybody's
100%.
just going and reacting all the time. Like, oh, this guy cut me off, or, oh, this cashier is trying to, and that constant cycle. And what I learned, like with that, or even like meditating or anything, that awareness where you can take a step back
100%
and then see things like from this outside view.
100%.
And it's something that maybe not a lot of people understand. Like, it's hard to explain, but it's just that.
I think Tony Robbins, he says he primes himself for his day, right? He has this priming ritual that he does in the morning. And it's to avoid those moments where, like, if somebody cuts you off in the morning and all of a sudden your whole day is ruined because that one person cut you off, you got in a bad mood. It was a domino effect of all the negative. He was like, in the morning, like, I like to stack the positive. So he'll do like a gratitude exercise. He'll do like the 3 things he wants to achieve, and you'll see him as done. And that sets the tone in a positive light to start the day for him. And like you were saying, like, you have to have that awareness of, like, when something bad may happen, that it's not from a reactionary standpoint. Like, oh, cut me off, I'm pissed, I'm upset. It's more so like, you start in a good mood, and if somebody cuts you off, how likely is it, if you're having the best day of your life, somebody cuts you off, that you're going to immediately go to the worst day of your life? It's not very likely. It's just not. Like, you're in such a high state, somebody cuts you off, you either laugh it off, or you, like, you turn up the music a little louder or whatever. You just dismiss it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that person might be going through something worse, or like that person may have to get somewhere. You automatically, like, you rationalize for them. Whereas if you're in a bad mood or you're going through something terrible, somebody cuts you off, you're like, oh, pull up to them, curse them out, or cut them off, God forbid.
Those road rage videos.
Bro, and road rage is getting worse. People are getting shot now.
It's crazy.
There was a dude, I went to go do the concealed license lesson, the 3-hour, right? And it happened that the guy there, his coworker's dad was the one who got involved with a road rage incident, which was where he accidentally cut somebody off, and the guy was peeling up to like talk to him or whatever, and he was trying to say, I'm sorry, like, I didn't mean to, and the guy already had his gun out and started firing. And so they also had somebody shooting, like the passenger was shooting, but in the midst of that, the driver of the car who initially cut off and was saying, I'm sorry, was killed.
Wow. In
a road rage incident where there were shots literally flying.
That's insane.
Like, why would you put yourself in that mindset to where your reaction is automatically being
die? Like, I'm gonna shoot you right now.
And you can avoid that. That's not a healthy state of mind speaking when you're want to shoot somebody. That's not, happy people don't hurt people. It's always.
Can't believe that.
And gratitude is significant. Like, you can't be grateful and angry at the same time. You can't be grateful and sad at the same time. You can't be grateful and fearful at the same time. So, like, when you use gratitude as a common practice, which comes with meditation, just being aware of like things aren't like, where does anxiety usually come from? It comes from like what the future may entail. And then where does like depression comes from? Like things of the past, or like, you just being upset over something embarrassing, something negative, whatever. You just dwelling on those things. Gratitude centers you, which is what meditation does, which is what I imagine the sensory thing does, because you're in an hour just floating. You don't have your phone.
You're not reacting to anything. Imagine how many times you
check your phone in an hour. And imagine if that's like the first thing you do when you wake up, which is what a lot of us do. And you don't leave that room for maybe meditating or priming or, that gratitude practice. You just check the phone and you have an immediate reaction to whatever your phone may present. Somebody may have messaged you something at 3 a.m. that you don't like. Somebody may have posted something in the morning that you woke up to that you may not have liked, or whatever.
Like a news breaks
out. You leave yourself open to being primed the wrong way versus priming yourself in a way that's more conducive to you and what you want to get out of life. Rather than reacting to life, you can now almost set your mindset to like, I'm going to prevent or, be proactive in terms of whatever may present itself. And then you have a healthier mind viewing the thing that you would be reacting to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense, because it's true. Like, just the fact that you got cut off and that guy's reaction was to take out his gun, and I was like, that blows my mind.
That happened here. So close.
Blows my mind. That blows my mind. And because it makes me think about it, and as I've kind of, doing the float tanks or any, just those things that help me like clear my head.
Yeah.
I really learned how like, man, like people can spend their whole life reacting to life. They never have that mental break to kind of understand and like take a break from all the craziness in life. You know what I mean? Like when I do the float tanks, that's exactly what it is. I'm disconnected from everything, literally everything. It's just me just laying there.
In your thoughts, in your mind.
In your thoughts. And then it's that challenge, that it being your thoughts. Not a lot of people are comfortable with that.
Yeah.
When people quarantine, when people were alone, 100%. When they had to stay home, they weren't going out and like distracting themselves all the time. They had to stay home and deal with themselves. And
what's crazy is even through that, like people can still distract themselves from their thoughts. Let me turn on an episode of whatever show. Let me watch this. Let me check social media or whatever. You're
not really alcoholism was going up. All these different
even
habits.
Food, even just eating bad food, because that gives you that good feeling, because bad food it tastes good.
It's like that comfort.
It's that comfort. And distracting yourself from what you really want to achieve. Maybe you want to lose 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds. And it's harder to face that reality rather than just being like, I'll start Monday. It'll be like, I'll start Monday. Let me eat something bad now. Or this is the last cheat meal I'm having.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. It's very easy to distract ourselves when things have become so easy to distract you. You can just Uber Eats McDonald's to your house. You can, the effort that it takes to do something bad has gotten so low that it's easier to do what's not productive than it is to do what is productive. And a lot of times when you sit in your thoughts, you can actually solve the situation that's bothering you. You can, instead of just getting caught up reacting to your thoughts
emotionally or anything,
you can find a way, like, okay, like it goes back to our first episode where we were like, it's the questions we ask. And it can be a very easy question to be like, this always happens to me, or why does this always happen to me? Or why am I such a loser? Or why are things sucking right now? And your brain will find the answer to whatever question you ask it. So why not ask an empowering question? Why not be like, what can I learn from this? Or how can I solve this? Or what's the solution? Or, whatever, what's great about this? Or reframing your mindset, which comes from meditation, which comes from tackling your thoughts. It's like, you can have bad thoughts for a certain amount of time. At a certain point, you're going to be like, that's enough. Either you're going to take a negative route towards your thoughts, or you're going to take a positive route. It's like, I got to fix this. I can't live like this anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's having that mental
awareness.
Yeah. Mental awareness.
100%.
Just really sitting there, and because it's crazy, but not a lot of people understand that. Like that mental, like the ability to take a step back and look at emotions or anything in life
from an unbiased lens.
Yeah, like from this objective standpoint. It's just people really do just live reacting react emotionally, and 100%. They never step back and be like, oh wait, like I can choose how I want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
100%, I know what you mean.
And I noticed that if somebody cuts me off, or it's the funniest thing to me when I'm driving and I'm driving and there's a red light in front of me. I'm just driving a normal speed, and like the person behind me, there's like that person that's rushing that wants to pass me and cut in front of me. I'm like, you're getting to the same red light that I am. And then they rush and they're speeding through, like, boom, 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 and they stop at the red light, and I'm stopping
right beside them.
And every time I tell, like, I'm driving with my sister or something, I'm like, what's the point?
This guy.
What was the point of that?
What was the point of that?
And I could have, and I find it funny, but it's also like, I feel like this is me being crazy, but I feel like how a person drives.
Yeah.
I feel like I can get an understanding of their personality.
Okay.
I don't know why.
I think I feel a certain way. Yeah.
You know, I don't know why. I could be completely wrong on this, but like, I know people that they want to drive like super aggressive and like woo, woo, and speeding through, and it's like a part of their personality is like that.
I think it even shows their true personality, because like you won't really necessarily cut somebody off in person. You know what I mean? You're walking and just stand in front of somebody.
Yeah,
but that may show you like that person's like true into like mindset or personality, or the way they approach it, or obstacles or whatever, like their reaction to a negative situation, maybe to like, let me show this person what it is, rather than the step back, self-aware, like, because the way, like, people cutting me off used to affect me a long time, and sometimes it still does, depending on what mood we're approaching that day with. But a lot of times, like, I question, like, what if that person's rushing to the hospital? Yes. What if that person is, has been called to the house and needs an emergency, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. I give them the benefit of the doubt, so like I don't have a reactionary response to somebody cutting me off, or I'm honking the horn, or like flicking them off in the rear view, or whatever the case may be. And obviously those moments also happen. There's moments where the mood gets the best of you, but it's like limiting those, because you don't want an unfortunate circumstance of like somebody cuts you off, you go to have a reactionary statement, and they have like a gun or something present.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. But also being able to understand that. Yeah, man. For those things. That's what's crazy to me. Like, it's so uncommon. Like, it's true. Like what you're saying, like we all have those moments where we do give in. Yeah. But it's like the fact that we're able to understand it and like step back.
Look at it from a moment like, yo, I slipped up from that moment.
Yes,
100%.
Exactly. Because other people, like, they'll carry it with that and be like,
that was normal. That was the right response. Yeah.
And
it may have been the right response, but like, is it necessarily the necessary response for yourself?
Right. Like you gave in. You gave in to that.
Yeah. It's like that meme that floats around social media all the time. It's like, if you had $86,400 deposited in your bank every day and somebody took $10, would you spend the rest of the money trying to get those $10 back?
Right.
Because you have 86,400 seconds in a day. If somebody was upset for 10 seconds of that time, would you spend the rest of that time trying to get those 10 seconds back? You wouldn't.
It's true.
It's real. It's like you wouldn't spend that much, like you knew it was getting deposited every single day. So it's like, were those 10 seconds worth it of that reaction, being upset, and then like
throwing off
all of that, time being upset?
Yeah, because you build up to, stay in this good state, mental state, and then if you let this little thing derail you, then boom. Once you get derailed, you have to work on coming back.
100%. And it's not rah motivation to be in a good place or a good mindset and be happy. It's like, it's beneficial to you as an individual, to yourself. Because if you're always in a bad mood, nothing good comes from a bad place. So why would you want to stay there,
Yeah, because...
And that's not to say bad things won't happen. It's just analyzing bad things from a, like you said, an unbiased perspective, an objective perspective. Yeah. And also maybe being empathetic to the other person, whatever that person may have caused. Maybe, your parents yelled at you or whatever. Maybe they're going through something, and you don't know what because they're dealing with the same emotions we are, and we don't take that into account sometimes. We're just like, yo, like I got yelled at by my dad for yada, yada, yada. But like dad might be under loads of pressure, and that just came out in that moment.
And it's interesting, my supervisor told me this yesterday when we were talking, and he was saying, like, we all live in our own, this is like, we all live in our own movie, right? Yeah. Like, we're the main character, and everybody else is just stopping through from your lens. Yeah. So like, it was a really interesting point. He was like, from your perspective, you only know your dad as your dad. You don't know him as the husband or the friend, or you don't know him as those other lenses. All different lenses.
Wow.
Yeah. I was
That's powerful.
And he's like, the same way he knows you as as your son. Yeah. He doesn't know you maybe as this from these other lenses that maybe only you understand, or maybe they, and that's what he was saying. He's like, sometimes maybe they know you more than you know yourself, or maybe you know yourself more than they know you. Because it's all in the, dude, I'm telling you, this conversation last night was 2 hours and
just gems.
And it's so true. Yeah. Because like what you were saying, like your parents, somebody yells at you or whatever, but you don't have that lens of what they're going through from their perspective. You don't know what they're navigating
at all.
And vice versa. Sometimes maybe a parent doesn't understand you. They feel like, no, you're just not. You're not understanding. You're not thinking clearly or something. Ways, and
it goes always. Like you might have a dialogue with me today and have the same dialogue a year from now. You would read it in a completely different way both times. Like because of what your awareness level is, what your experiences are like, is how you're going to gauge. Like if me and you go through the same experience, we're going to have two completely different meanings of that experience. Now, it's not necessary that they'll be completely different, but like the way because of what we've been through, what's leading up to that moment shapes our viewpoint of that moment. Yeah. And so like, let's say, I don't know, somebody's telling us something, right? We might take two completely different parts of that story that mean the most to us because of what we're experiencing in that moment. So it goes back to like the whole theme of us just being more empathetic towards one another, because we're all just dealing with life.
Yeah.
And we're all trying to keep on keeping on.
Yeah, there it is. Boom, the plug. The plug. It's so true though, man. Like how people, the interpretations of things. Like I feel like how you interpret something is kind of like, you know, how you are as a person at this current time. Yeah. Like you can be talking to someone, and if someone talks a certain way, one person could look at that and be like, oh, did you just, you know, like they take it like offensive. Yeah. And another person could take it as like, oh wait, like this, I don't know. It's just different. It's like lens. You can give constructive criticism on something, and one person can think you're just being really offensive. You're attacking me personally, and me as a human.
Like, okay, let me make adjustments.
Oh, I see. You're trying to help me improve on this, and it's very interesting, those interpretations, because I mean, you see that in the world, right? Like,
which is like in a point on constructive criticism, just a little deviation, like. If somebody's giving you constructive criticism, 9 times out of 10, they're not hating. They just care for you and they want to see you do well. Like the friend that just lets you do whatever is not a friend. But a friend that'll be like, hey, like you could do this a little bit better, or like, you know, improve in this way or that way. They're looking out for you because they want to see. And that's not necessarily to say what their constructive criticism is right. You still have to process it for yourself, because, you know, you also know things that may... you know, that person may not know. Like if somebody comes to you and like gives you advice on podcasting, it may be something that you have never thought of, but also it might be something that you've thought of and you've already analyzed, and you're like, okay, that's actually what
like it's something purely subjective.
Exactly.
Like what you like maybe I don't like. And it's one of those, but you appreciate
of course,
the effort and
not to take it as a slight.
Yeah, you know, what, you think you know more than me? That's a response, right? 100%. You think you know more than me, or something?
It's a reactionary response.
And maybe,
and even if they were like trying to say it from that angle, you can, in a good state of mind, you can just be like, oh, okay, like you just take it and just that's
it. You understand, and you're like moving on. Yeah. But if people who you know feel like they need this, you know, they're in this state of mind where they feel like they need to prove themselves, or like this reactionary state, maybe ego driven.
It's insecurities,
insecurities, yes. Because I feel like people with the biggest egos are the ones that are just trying to project. They're trying to bring down those insecurities and project it through this very,
which is what is beautiful about us is like we can be vulnerable and share those insecurities, because other people are also dealing with those insecurities, and then they can connect, rather than you trying to suppress your insecurities or your vulnerability and pretend like you're up here and then nobody can relate to you. Which is like what is the biggest issue with modern day influencers? Like everybody's trying to show that they're better than somebody else. I have this many followers, I have this much money, I have this house, this car. Whereas like truly influential people, when you look at like a Michael Jordan, like didn't make varsity his sophomore year, you know, or you know, whatever those things that you can relate to that person, like was like, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna dominate. Like those people are influential because they had relatable circumstances and they dominated on relatable circumstances instead of showing, look at me, I'm like this. Follow me because I'm like up here. That's not really influence. You know what I mean?
It's true.
Like what are influencers really influencing? You know, is it to get that Botox, to get that plastic surgery, to show you that you're not good enough just the way that you look? Or, you know, are they genuinely pushing you in a better direction of like, want more for yourself? If I achieve this, you can achieve this as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a clear difference.
Yeah, like
there's people who have millions of followers that just they're not promoting anything good. It's always, you know, how you can, how you can make yourself look better illusion-wise or whatever the case may be. Like, you know, not naturally, like, hey, love yourself.
Yeah, like, or how to be like the alpha male, like you know, how to be 100%. Like this person. It's like
the
most confident people are ones that don't feel the need to prove anything
at all.
That's the crazy thing. Like,
at all.
Like somebody can come up to you and be like, I bet you can't do 50 push-ups.
Yeah. It's like, okay.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Don't care. But then
like,
someone that
no, I'll do 50 push-ups. I'll do 50 push-ups right now.
Yeah. And it's the two responses. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
On how that, you know.
It's even, and it comes to like the fake it till you make it thing. Like, even if you're not as confident in that area, fake it in that moment. Because you don't have to prove anything to anybody at any point in time. And when you can do it, it'll be natural because you've already kind of like put yourself in that mindset of like, you know what, like if you can't do 50 push-ups, somebody, and you're insecure about doing push-ups, somebody's like, you can't do 50 push-ups. You just being like, okay. And you in your back of your mind, like, okay, I don't know if I can do 50 push-ups. Like, I'll show you I can do 50 push-ups.
Or even that person that's like, yeah, I can't do 50 push-ups.
Oh yeah, even better. Even better.
Like, it's just like,
even better.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
okay, I can't do 50 push-ups. What did this prove?
Yeah, that's it. You know, like, it's very interesting.
And the whole thing with the fake it till you make it, you got to eventually make it.
Because you have something to work towards and have that goal and mentality.
I think it's more so the mindset of like the fake it till you make it aspect, not necessarily you lying and faking it, you know? It's more like, let me put myself in the mindset of, let me act confident. What are the attitudes of confident while I'm working on being confident?
Yeah.
That'll eventually lead to you becoming confident. You know?
Because your brain can't really tell the difference. As long as you're constantly giving that to yourself. 100%.
I'm glad you said that because it goes back to like the whatever question you ask of your brain, the brain is going to answer that question.
And that's why, you know, when we started this episode, acknowledging the positive things that you do.
100%.
Give your brain that positive reinforcement. Don't just, if you keep acknowledging the bad, your brain's going to know nothing but the bad.
Dude, it's like, why don't diets and like those fad diets work? Because they're like, okay, like no clean, like eating clean for this amount of days. And then what ends up happening at the end of those days? Like you reward yourself with a cheat meal and then that cheat meal gets used to it. And, you know, you start cheating a lot more and then you lose the gains that you might have made during the fad diet versus let me have 6 great days of eating, and that 7th day, let me cheat. So now you're looking forward to that 7th meal or that 7th day, but you're going to behave those 6 days. It's rewarding yourself for doing good. It's the same thing with our brain.
Yeah.
Reward it so like it looks forward to it versus you just being negative and like beating yourself up. Your brain's like gonna be like, okay, what's the point of me working so hard, or what's the point of me trying, or what's the point, like, let me just give up. It's if you don't give yourself that, like, hey, I did this right, good, let's, you know, celebrate that win, on to the next.
It's like a discipline. It's consistent. It's everything.
And it's not like rewarding yourself like, oh my God, like I'm gonna have, you know, I ate a good meal today, so now let me have like a steak and a fries and a burger.
You look
like,
at the most fit people. Look at The Rock.
Yeah.
He does 6 days. On that 7th day, he eats whatever he wants.
100%.
He earned it.
There's
nothing better. I'm a food guy. I love food, but there's nothing better than earning those nachos, earning those. When you've worked out, you've done what you had to do, and that day that you go, you earned it.
Yes.
As opposed to like guilt eating it. You know, like you just feel like crap and you're eating it and it's
100%.
Good, but then you feel shitty after.
Yeah.
But when you like do what you got to do and you go, you earned it. Like you eat it and you're like, yeah, I feel good.
I feel great.
I earned that.
Yeah. Like it doesn't even, what does not hinder my anything.
Nothing. Because you know what you've been doing. And that builds confidence.
100%.
That builds everything.
It's the same thing with our mind. It's you give it that little reward when you do something good. You acknowledge the good so you can reinforce the good versus just beating yourself up about the bad. And you continuously like beating yourself, you're going to reach a threshold where you're like, that's it. I can't do anything right. Even though you've done certain things right, you just never rewarded yourself for those things that you've done right.
Yeah,
and
man.
I think that's a
perfect way to wrap it up. I feel like that came full circle. Full circle. Because it's so true.
It is.
Yeah, complete full circle on that. That was great. Yeah, guys. I feel like this one I feel like we went like deeper.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like we 100%. Really went. And
I hope you guys got a lot of value out of the episode. And to give us a follow on Instagram, the KOKO Podcast. Send us emails with questions. We'll eventually do a Q&A at some point when we have enough questions gathered. We just launched live the first time, so we're going to give us some time to build up on that. But
Yeah,
that's what we're working towards.
Please send us questions, suggestions.
Yeah, leave
stories.
us comments, anything.
What's the most embarrassing thing that's happened to you?
Answer that in the questions, in the comments.
And how did you react?
Yeah.
What kind of person were you? What, and it could be fun,
No, 100%. Yeah.
Let
us know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much
for watching and for listening. Anything else?
No, that's it, man. Appreciate you guys for tuning in.
To the
Much
next
love
one.
as always. Peace.
Goodbye.